In the Commonwealth of Virginia, the legislative session right now is underway. Like most states, they're talking about lots of different laws, taxes, roads, highways, fees, things like that. But the Education Committee in Richmond, Virginia is tackling a brand new bill that was put forth by Republicans. It's called Sage's Law. Frankly, every state should be debating a law like Sage's Law. I want you to hear some of the testimony from earlier this week. This is a woman named Michelle. She's the grandmother of Sage. Her last name's being withheld to protect this little girl's privacy. She's going to tell you her story about what happened when her daughter, her granddaughter technically, decided that she wanted to identify as the other gender, how the public school system in Virginia treated the situation. Watch this.
Puberty began and COVID hit, and she was treated for depression and anxiety, at times very severe. Her teachers shared any concerns with me so her treatment could be adapted. The transparency ended in August of 2021 when Sage started high school. She started a public high school, and she told me that all the girls there were bi, trans, lesbian, emo, and she wanted to wear boys' clothes and be emo. Because I saw it as just a phase, it was fine with me. But at school, she told them something different. She was now a boy named Draco with male pronouns. Sage asked the school not to tell me, and they did not tell me, even though I informed them of her mental health history and medication. If I had known, this would be a much different story. She was terribly bullied. No one told me, but boys followed her, touched her, threatened violence and rape. Something happened in the boys' bathroom, but for 2 days, the school told me nothing. They kept meeting with Sage alone, and she became so distraught, they called me to pick her up. That evening, I found a hall pass labeled Draco, and Sage told me she was identifying as a boy, and that her counselor said she could use the boys' bathroom. She'd been jacked up against the wall by a group of boys. She was crying, terrified. I said, just stay home, we'll figure it out. That was my last conversation with Sage for 5 months.
All right, so there's more to this devastating testimony, and I do suggest that you take a look at it. You can find it on the Virginia government homepage. But let's talk about this bill and how important it is. Laura Hanford is the former Fairfax County Education Curriculum Advisory Committee member, and Ginny is the director of the Education Freedom Center for Independent Women's Forum. And ladies, I know that you've been following this bill closely, so I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you, Larry.
Laura, let's start with you here. The bill is called Sage's Law. Quite simply, what does Sage's Law do?
So Sage's Law is a legislative response to address the policy failures, the institutional points where things went really, really wrong for Sage. And they're directly tied to policies that are present in Virginia right now, Northam policies and others. But simply put, it has three components. Parents have to be notified if a child presents as a different gender at school. And secondly, counselors cannot meet secretly with a student without informing parents, particularly about issues of gender dysphoria. And third, you cannot construe as abuse raising a child according to their biological sex, which seems like sort of an insane thing to have to legislate, but yeah. That is the push among the activists.
It's maddening to anybody listening or watching right now that you even have to have a law that affirms a parent's right to parent their child. But that's really what this is. But more importantly, it prevents government employees, in this case educators, schools, administrators, of getting between a parent and child and holding secrets from them. And Ginny Gentles, let's bring you in here because, again, this seems like a no-brainer. If a child went to a teacher and said, please don't tell my parents that I'm getting bad grades and that I was truant last week without an excuse because they'll punish me, the school's not going to respect that. The school's going to tell the parents. Why is this allowed to be kept secret? Something that's so personal, so delicate, something of a sexual nature, and frankly, something that could affect a child's mental health. Why on earth do they justify keeping this secret from their parents?
Well, quite simply, it's because activists have captured the K-12 education system in our country. This isn't just happening in Virginia, it's happening all around. I think there was an original thought that this is just happening in California or New York, in blue states or blue cities, in extremely liberal places. But Sage's story makes it very clear that even in rural Virginia, activists have made sure that policies are in place, that teachers have been trained up, that professional development materials have been infused into the training for these teachers, and these policies have been enforced in a way that a secretive gender support plan, and that's the technical name, gender support plan, is the norm in schools in Virginia, rural, urban, in the country. And these secretive gender support plans are actual documents that you can look at, where staff are told to fill them out, check the boxes, put exactly the name that the child wants to go by, put exactly one of the 73 genders that the child wants to choose, and that the child chooses where they're going to go to the restroom, the locker rooms they'll use, where they'll stay in overnight accommodations. And the child chooses if the parent is going to be notified. This is appalling. Of course, this wasn't an option even if a child was having a similar issue like anorexia or
Yeah,
bulimia, an
exactly.
eating disorder where they were uncomfortable in their body. But
Right.
if they're uncomfortable in their body and express it in a form of another gender, it's a secret from the parent.
Oh, and I dare see if a kid is caught smoking in the back parking lot, I think it'll be, all hell would break loose, and every parent and maybe even law enforcement will be notified. Laura, what we heard in this testimony here is so critically important, because when the school decides to interject themselves here and say, yeah, we'll keep this secret, well, then when this bullying incident happened in a boys' room, well, now the school can't tell the parents about this bullying incident, because then they would have to explain why the girl was in the boys' room. So you keep this one secret, and suddenly the parent is kept out of so many importantly critical issues that are affecting their child.
That's right. And I think Sage's case is almost a textbook example of what the school plan is and what this activist push is. And people don't realize that it's this evil dual track of training school counselors to keep secrets and schools to have these plans, while simultaneously training judges in family courts. Family court is a lot of where these battles are taking place. And so you have this dynamic where the school keeps a secret, the counselors affirm in secret, and then if something happens, the child has to go to Child Protective Services, or there's a runaway situation or something, and a judge gets involved. Then if you have a judge like Judge Kershaw in Sage's story, who was trained to affirm, then suddenly guess who comes in to testify? The school counselors. And it's all based in Sage's story. All of the school part happened in about a 2-week period. Imagine how much contact those two counselors had in a 2-week period. They barely even knew her, much less her mother.
Right.
So it's a disaster waiting to happen.
By the way, we're leaving out some riveting testimony that Michelle made about her granddaughter that included Sage. It's horrific. She was sex trafficked across multiple state lines on 2 different occasions. There were gang rapes, multiple sexual assaults, exploitation. It's every parent's worst nightmare, especially when you find out that the secrecy that the public school system injected into this whole process meant that the parents would never learn about it until the worst of the worst happened. All right, ladies, stay with us. We got one more segment on this, because now we have to talk about the politics of it. Why this is even political, I don't know. But this is being debated, and there will be a vote in Virginia, and we need to make sure that it's voted on properly. Continuing now on our conversation about a critical piece of legislation making its way through the Education Committee in Virginia, but this is happening in every state, I assure you. And if your state isn't debating a law like Sage's bill, they should be. And you should talk to your state representative or your state senator. Ginny Gentles is the director of Education Freedom Center Independent Women's Forum. She is on your right. And Laura Hanford is the former Fairfax County Education Curriculum Advisory Committee member. She's on your left. These are 2 women who have been engaged in the public school systems. And you've seen these policies play out. Again, I'm dumbfounded that this is, first of all, it has to be debated and voted on, Ginny Gentles. But I'm also disheartened to learn that this is really a partisan issue. Democrats seem to be against letting parents know about something so critically important about their parents, and thankfully Republicans are in favor of it. Why? I know I'm being naive, but why is that? Is this, as Bill Maher said the other day, is this the hill that Democrats want to die on?
Well, specific to Virginia, there is a member of the House of Delegates who identifies as transgender. This is a biological male who identifies as a woman. So it could be that this person's colleagues want to express loyalty.
I want to talk about this person because Danica Roem had national attention, first transgender elected official in America, I believe. Danica Roem, unlike Sage, Danica Roem got to live an entire young adult life as a male, went through puberty as a male, got to be a fully grown man, and then, for whatever personal reasons, decided to identify as a woman, to identify as Danica. I believe that's a very different case here, Ginny, than a little child, a prepubescent child. Why can't we connect those dots here politically?
Well, we do need to make it very clear that a lot of advocacy does come from these biological males who have had that opportunity. In some cases, like Rachel Levine, somebody active at the federal level, was able to have a long, lengthy marriage and 3 children. And we are taking away that right from these often young girls who are being pushed down this path of social and medical transition and likely being sterilized if they go through these medical procedures. Therefore, they will not be able to have children, and their breasts are cut off, so they will certainly not be able to breastfeed children if that's something that they choose in the future. So these biological males who are driving a lot of this advocacy are taking away the future and the opportunity for these young girls, and they're creating and enforcing policies and laws that are cruel, unkind, and dangerous. And they're inflicting them on, again, these young girls like Sage. So I think that we need to set aside loyalty to colleagues like this transgender identifying delegate. And we also need to make sure that representatives are listening to their constituents, listening to parents, listening to concerned citizens, and not only listening to activists. Activists are incredibly influential. They're very well funded, and they have captured too many institutions, and that needs to stop.
Yeah, and let's talk about the colleagues down there. This is coming out of the Education Committee in Virginia. Laura Hanford, there's supposed to be a vote earlier today. That's been postponed till Friday now. Is there some concern that even some Republicans aren't going to go along with this? Where does it stand right now?
So I think it's a very active discussion right now, and I think that the vast majority of Republicans are 100% on board. I've had wonderful discussions with people down there. People understand the seriousness of the issue. They're willing to. Chairman Avoli was willing to have a full hearing in sort of an unusual format at our request to be able to bring in some top experts after Michelle to tie into different pieces of her testimony. So there's really a sense of cooperation. I'm not going to speak for any particular member on the committee. I think there are some questions relating to notification and how we sort out some specifics of, the bill. I don't know. There's some questions that I think are legitimate to answer. We'll make an effort. And if those questions aren't sufficiently answered, there's still the political side. Virginians do not want schools to hide.
No, they sure don't. I think the last poll I saw in Virginia was 70%. And if you don't think parents, if this isn't a winning political issue, if you really need to boil it down to politics, tawdry electoral politics, just ask Terry McAuliffe how the politics go on this. Right. We're going to have to leave it there. The vote is Friday. We will talk about it on Friday. Laura Hanford, thank you for your advocacy. And Ginny Gentles, as always, with Independent Women's Forum, thank you as well. We'll continue to follow this story. This is an election year, by the way, in Virginia. And if Republicans, at the very least Republicans, can't figure out that parents need to be included in the conversation about something as intimate, private, and serious as this, then, well, we'll see them in November. That's it for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, I will see you on the radio.